You're listening to the Custom Built Podcast. In today's episode, we're going to discuss how we know we're in our next phase of whatever our life is looking like. So, not the next phase of life, but how do we know we're in a different version of ourselves? So, stay tuned. I don't know if I told you on the last podcast that I was going to continue talking about more home renovation stuff or, home building. And I will get back to that. It's so important. It's an important topic, especially for homeowners that maybe have never experienced it. So I'm passionate about that. I'm also really passionate, if you haven't figured out, about our self-development and our growth and what's important to me and what I've experienced. I think it's really helpful to share it because I know I'm not alone in a lot of my own experiences. They might be my experiences, but I'm not alone. People everywhere are experiencing their own stuff, and we're just not alone in that, right? So I find it, I'm continuing the conversation that I had last week where life just keeps lifing, right? And it's coming at us hard, and we're like, what the frick is happening? And how it's so important that it is happening because it's preparing us for what's next, right? And so I had a conversation with my husband, with the kids' dad, and it was a really, really good one because we were talking about getting into our next versions and how we recognize that versus this fight or flight mode that we might also be familiar with. So both my husband and I are very familiar with this fight or flight. I'm sure a lot of us are. These are things that we've been working through personally and together for ourselves, and recognizing the differences in our bodies and how we move and how it affects our lives. And so we were just having this really great conversation, and he's like, well, how do you know? How do you know that you are at that next version? I see it as, it's just taking this leap and just doing it. And I might be getting this wrong a little bit, so hold with me a little while I'm trying to remember and recap our conversation. But essentially, we were having this conversation and I was talking about boundaries, and I was like, my body was literally telling me that I was crossing a boundary, and I wasn't recognizing it as that, but the rest of my body was also having this physiological, I was my digestion was not right. I was feeling it in so many different ways that I didn't identify it with as crossing a boundary. So when I realized that, I had this sense of peace and calming. And I said, oh, I see this now. I see what I'm doing. I see how this isn't lining up with this version of myself of who I'm working on being, the person that sets the boundaries and holds them and respects myself and honors me, and not working around other people's feelings and people pleasing in that sense. So I was finding myself doing something similar, just even if it's something for myself that I needed to hold a boundary for, getting back into a comfort zone that no longer works for me. And so he's like, well, how do you know? And how do you know it's not? Because he's like, my body's fight or flight, so it's scary. And how do I know that it's one or the other? And I was like, for me, it's different. When I have fight or flight when I am in a conversation that makes me feel really uncomfortable. So when I was going to quit my job and I was going in to have that conversation, I was having those big reactions of that protection mode. You're not safe. This isn't going to be okay. You shouldn't have this conversation. You don't know what the outcome's going to be. I have no reason to not feel comfortable having this conversation with the people that I was going to talk to. They've never given me a reason to fear. They might be reactive, but it wasn't in a reactive way that was mean or hurtful. It was just a reaction, and reactions were very uncomfortable for me. They still are. I'm not saying they're not, but I found myself realizing that when I was holding back because I was worried about someone else's reaction, no matter what it was, if it was even I got to give news or say something that's not something I'm not happy with in my marriage and having to have that conversation with my husband, I was finding myself tiptoeing around the bush, and I don't find myself to be that type of person. I think I'm pretty direct. I think I'm very communicative. So when I recognized that I was not doing that in these situations because I didn't want to have a reaction, I didn't want to make someone else feel bad or have some of their own feelings, but It's not my job to be their emotional gatekeeper, right? And it's not my job to feel their feelings for them. That's theirs. So when I was having that moment, my body was basically trying to tell me, like, don't have this conversation, because I was afraid. But what I ended up having to do was literally just tell myself, like, you are safe. You are okay. You are fine. You are safe. And I had to remind myself that. And it was really grounding, and it allowed me to see clear in the bigger picture of why I was doing this, why I was having this conversation, why I was leaving this job I love. And it wasn't about the job itself. It was me. It was what I need, what is right for me in my future. And when I was able to, like, come back and have that calm, like, talk down for myself and ground myself, it was then a peaceful and, like, this grounding of knowing. And that's a very different way to see it, as in from where I was. And so when Casey was asking me about this, like, how do you know, and how do you know it's not a fight or flight? And I was able to have this let him explain it like this. And I think it's the best way to explain it. It's just very different. When I'm way up in my head and I'm panicking and I'm wishy-washy and I'm not really sure what I want to do, what I should do, like, that tells me I am not grounded, and that I need to reconsider what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, and refocus. And so when I do that and I listen to my body and I find where I'm not honoring my boundaries, whether it's for myself or I'm letting somebody else cross a boundary, then I'm able to see it clearly, and then have a grounding conversation with myself if it needs to be, or with whoever it is that might be crossing a boundary. When you know you're in the next version of yourself, you no longer are accepting things that you used to do. So when Casey asked me that, like, how do you know it should just be this leap? Like, you just make this choice and you do it. Because I asked him, I'm like, well, what does it mean to you? Like, what do you mean? What's the leap? And he's like, you just go for it. You start doing these things. I'm like, well, aren't you already doing these things? Like, he didn't see that he was leaving an older version of himself and stepping into this new version, because I think he was seeing it in, like, this big grand thing, like just taking this leap. Like, taking a leap sounds really big, right? Like, it sounds like you all of a sudden just do, and everything around you falls into place, and it's all happening at once. And that's not always true. You might take a big leap and you might make a big change, but that doesn't mean the environment around you changes with you at that time. But what starts happening is you make these choices, you make this decision, you take that leap for yourself. You say, this is a scary thing I'm going to do. I'm so uncomfortable. However, I'm so uncomfortable where I am right now, and I cannot accept this version of myself as it. I'm going to take that leap and make this choice for myself and do it this way instead. And when you do that and you make that choice, now you're making the smaller choices to change the environment around you. So for example, I said, you can no longer do this now, can you? Like, you can't go back and do this. He's like, no. And I'm like, what about this? Like, you're doing X, Y, and Z. Can you imagine yourself not doing these things now? And he's like, no. I'm like, you already did it. You already know the answer. So you already are doing it. And I thought it was just like a really great way to put that in perspective, because he wasn't recognizing for himself how he already stepped into that newer version of himself. So even if he's still having that, like, fight or flight feeling for things, he also doesn't recognize how he's already taken that leap into that version of himself that's different. Then it doesn't necessarily mean it's a better version. I use that term because for me, it feels like growth. And so that might not be the way that he needs to describe it. That might not be the way you need to describe it, So there's no right or wrong way of how you're moving. But, like, when we're making changes and shifts in our lives, I see it as, how am I becoming a better version of myself? How am I being somebody that I am completely 100% comfortable with and confident in the person that I'm showing up as? So if I need to give news that's not nice, like just not pleasant or uncomfortable, can I do this in the most calm and respectful way? So it doesn't necessarily mean that the content and what I'm giving or that I'm sharing is going to be any less hurtful, but am I being hurtful as I'm doing it? And to me, when I was in my early 20s, it probably would have been really hurtful. If I was hurt, I was being hurtful back. And so that version of me is no longer somebody that feels comfortable now. And I'm not saying she was not better or she was worse. She was just a version of me that I'm no longer comfortable with. What I'm working for now is, and like I said, I use my better self, my best version as a way of like showing growth, but not in the sense of these other versions of me weren't good enough or they weren't kind or they weren't good, because every version of me was special. It was still me, right? And they might be more like shadow sides or like sides that just weren't really something I'm always proud about. But I'm also so proud of the way that I've grown over the years and over months. And so I think it's really helpful to remember those things. And so why is this relevant to our lives and like when we're working and when we're working in our homes and changing our homes? It all comes down to that same thing. Like, is the person you are now living in an environment that represents who you are now? Are the people around you, the things that your hobbies, like, are they a good representation of who you are now? Or are they a representation of a past version of yourself, right? So, and if it's a past version of yourself, are those pieces that you still want to keep and hold on to? Or are those past versions of yourself that just no longer feel good to you? They just might not fit a little, right? Like, all right, let's use this like a sweater, right? You wash your sweater, you put it in the dryer, and it shrinks a little bit. And now it no longer fits you perfectly. Like your favorite sweater, it always was like the go-to place like you wanted to wear it because it was so comfortable. And then you wash it one day and it shrinks, and now it's no longer fitting you the way that you loved it to, right? Like it's like that. It's like you might still love it, but it no longer fits you the way it used to. And so you might have to let that go. Or you might want to keep it on and be uncomfortable in it. But that's a boundary. Like that would be like the equivalent of you like crossing a boundary. Like it's just a little uncomfortable. Like I used to love this one thing and now it's no longer fitting me right. It's time for me to let it go. Thank you, let go. And so it's important to know this and recognize it, because when you're having conversations at work, when you're having conversations during a renovation or with your spouse or your kids or whoever, your family, if you're getting these like little niggles inside you, like saying like, this isn't right, like something's off, this isn't comfortable, stop for a minute and figure it out. Is it not comfortable because it's making you feel a certain way, like an uncomfortable feeling? And if that's the case, then, work through that. Or is it uncomfortable because like, this is a boundary that I am no longer okay with. They're crossing a boundary. They're showing me a behavior. They're using words or tones, things that are no longer things I tolerate in my life. And if that's the case, then you can say, I'm going to pause right here and I'm going to tell you that this is not an okay thing for me. And that's not unkind. And it's so uncomfortable because you're like, oh no, what are they going to say? And I'm being rude. You're not being rude. You're honoring yourself. And when you honor yourself, you show up better. You're so much more confident. And when you're confident and you're sure in yourself, you are now sure and confident to everybody else. You're showing people how it's okay to treat you and how to work with you. So if you're not being able to hold the boundaries for yourself and where you need to, they're not going to do it either. And they're going to do whatever it is that feels comfortable for them. And that might look something that's rude or not kind. And I'm not saying they're rude or unkind. I'm just saying people will push a boundary if you don't give them a boundary. And that goes for us individually too. Like we push boundaries all the time. It's just our nature. So if people don't give us those boundaries and tell us what's okay and what's not, we're going for it. And sometimes we know it, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we're oblivious to understanding like that wasn't really appropriate. And how are you going to know? How are you going to know if it was appropriate or not if someone doesn't stop you and be like, no, don't do that? And again, it doesn't need to be this like crazy thing. It doesn't need to turn into like this big crazy conversation. It's just setting it and being like, all right, let's move on. So recognizing them in yourself is allowing you to show up better for you, and then letting other people see how it's okay to treat you and behave around you. So once you start recognizing these things that you've put in place, that leap you took, and then these boundaries that you've created, that you've recognized, that you're honoring, you should celebrate that. Let's celebrate that for a minute. Like, what are you doing now that you wouldn't do a year ago? 3 years ago, like whatever. Let's celebrate that because it's huge. It's such a big accomplishment, and it allows you to remember that you did hard things before, you can do hard things again. So again, life's just throwing stuff at us. Like, again, I'm not special, but life just keeps coming and it's fraying my nerves, okay? And I feel fragile in a lot of ways. Like, I am not somebody that used to let myself feel feelings, or I would feel them so much and I would be explosive. Like, think of a child with a tantrum, okay? But as an adult size, not quite tantrum-like, but it wasn't healthy. When I felt too much, I didn't know how to act. I didn't have the emotional regulation that I have now, which I'm still even working through today, which is light years ahead of what I was. So I am finally allowing myself to feel the feelings in a really healthy way, but it feels fragile. And it feels almost like when I'm meeting people, when I'm networking for business, and I'm trying to show up like times like now, I worry that it comes across as a lack of confidence or low self-esteem, because there's like this underlying feeling of like sadness for me. And sadness isn't the only feeling I'm having. Like, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm excited, like I'm happy. There's so many emotions happening right now, but sadness is like a pretty big one that's like an underlying thing for me right now. So it feels so fragile. And I was meeting with somebody yesterday for networking, because if you don't already know, I not only have started Katie Go, which is this platform for helping homeowners, maybe like you, get through your home renovations and like tips and guidance and designing and making your home truly your own, right? But since I've started this little business, I have also received my builder's license, my residential builder's license here in South Carolina. So now I am a licensed residential home builder. And I'm like, this is the perfect time. Why not start this? I'm recognizing my whole story coming together, or like my whole journey. And I might have told you this might be redundant, but I'll give you a quick little spin on it. So interior design was like my goal path. I was like, I am 100% going to be an interior designer when I grow up. Went to school, figured out that was not it for me. Like, I love the interior architecture aspect of it and the rearranging, but like going through and like doing the whole like finishes and bringing that whole concept together, like I do like that. I like seeing the finished product, but that was not it for me. Like, there was more for me outside of just interior design. And so I went into project managing thinking I was going to flip houses and kind of do like my own style of interior design, to learn how to manage homes and renovations and reconstructions. And so I spent many years in the reconstruction, like, so after big disasters like water, fire, mold, whatever, and reconstructing homes that way, and really fell in love with that process, building homes, fixing homes, doing big work that sometimes meant foundational, So there was a lot of work that came in from that I learned through reconstruction. I'm like, wow, I love this. And so from there, I decided I was going to get licensed, and I didn't have dreams to be a builder. That wasn't really in my intentions. But as I started growing Katie Go and then my license, I needed to take that test before April 1st. Like, I had a deadline. I was like, I got to take this test if I'm going to do this at all. So I went for it and I got it, and I'm so proud, right? But again, like, as I recognize and go through things again I thought I was going to be an interior designer. I go through school, and then I'm like, no, it was the same idea. I got my residential builder's license, and instead of being like, no, I'm not going to be a builder, I'm like, wait, why can't I? Why can't I do it all? And why shouldn't I? This is exciting. I love this stuff. I love building houses. I love the creative side of it. I love the building side of it. Like, it is so fulfilling. It lights me up. I love being around it. And I love helping homeowners figure out how to make their homes theirs and how to make it work for them. And so where I'm going with all of this is that I felt so fragile in this sense, but as I'm trying to build up two businesses at the same time and show up here, right? If we want to call this podcast businesses, I mean, essentially, I'm showing up in 3 different ways, but they all come together in the same sense, the same idea, the same overarching passion and core values that I almost have a hard time trying to explain it to people, because I'm like, am I coming across not confident in myself? I'm a brand new builder. I have nothing fully to show. Who will trust somebody that's new, right? So like, there is this questioning and this confidence of like, of that, right? And are they recognizing my sadness and my fragility and like that emotional standpoint? Like, I'm not fragile in the way like I'm just gonna like break and crumble if somebody says something mean to me. I'm not that fragile. I'm just saying my nerves are a little just frayed and they're just a little hot. And like, I sometimes just need to remember to ground myself. And in those moments where I'm in my head and I'm not grounded, do I come across as not confident or not capable? And it's so important to me to share these things with you. And sometimes that makes me an overshare, even if I'm like going back to meeting this person. I had to, like, I felt like I needed to share this stuff. I'm like, you don't need to know my whole story, but you need to know that I've gone through a lot of stuff this year and my nerves are frayed, but I almost feel like it's a hindrance for me when I'm talking about my business and what I want to do. So I am on, ground level trying to build this thing up, and I want to show up. And how can I show that I am confident and know I can show up and be a very strong person as a builder, as a guide, and have people trust and believe that if I'm not able to be honest and who I am and what's going on right now? Again, it doesn't need to be a deep personal thing, but I'm going to tell you the raw, real stuff. And I find myself just like questioning that and like, how does that come across in like these networking situations? And it's hard, but what is true for me and what I've learned is, as I'm learning my next versions and into these new spaces that I'm growing into, I am prepared now for it. And I wasn't prepared for that before. And I'm prepared for that now because I've recognized what's no longer working for me. I've made a choice. I took a leap and I went for it. And I feel so secure in those decisions and in those spaces that when I start going back into old habits, into old behaviors, my body literally tells me this isn't right. And I have to sit with that and remember and say, okay, you just tried to fall back into an old pattern that no longer suits you for who you are right now, and say, thank you, okay, and now let's move forward. And so it's important. That's an important thing. And I wasn't somebody that was able to talk and share about what I'm doing and show up like I am. And so here I am doing it. And I think it's a really strong, like, for me, it feels really good. It feels good to be able to be honest and just open about my experiences and what I am going through now and how I'm growing and how I'm building and how I show up as a builder, as a coach, as a guide, a consultant, a designer. These are all things that play a factor in. I always am considering not just for myself, like I am considering how it's going to affect me, but also how it's going to affect who I am talking to and who in my family and everything. And I think it's a very strong thing that I am able to do now that I was not able to do in my past. So I'm proud of it. And I also question, am I showing up in a way that doesn't seem confident? Does it show up in a way that's like, there's this underlying thing that she's not sharing with me, and it makes me feel like she's not confident in herself, or I'm not trusting something. And I don't know, have you ever had that experience where you've talked to somebody and you ask them how they're doing and you can just tell by their body language that they're not okay, but what they say is, I'm good, I'm happy, I'm fine. And you're just like, are you though? Like, your whole body language is telling me otherwise, and your intuition is telling you one thing. And that might be true. They might be fine in the moment with you and while you're talking, but they might also be experiencing something that happened at home and they're not fine with it. And so what you're seeing is this residual feelings of what they are experiencing somewhere else, but they're showing up and they're fine with you. So that might be true. And you could take them at that face value, but don't ignore those feelings. And I worry about that because I read into those. So maybe I'm not typical. Maybe this isn't something that other people are reading into and seeing. But if I'm feeling it, I can't be alone in that. And I also want to tell you that you're not alone in it. So if you're reading these things and you're feeling these ways, you're not alone. And we'll figure it out. We'll always get there, right? If you look through your past and all the hard things that you've been through, you know you'll get through the hard things now because you did it before. And it always is better on the other side. Like, if you've really gone through it and you've really like put the work into it to grow and to learn, you almost always come out. No, I'm firm on that. If you've gone through a hard time and you took it as a lesson and a way to learn and grow from it, you always come out on the other side better than you were before. You always come out. And when I say better, I don't mean like that person before you wasn't good enough. I'm just saying you've learned something. It's something now that you get to take and just keep growing as a person. You are growing. So when you come out on the other side, you have learned something, you have gained something. You are now one step higher than you were before. That is that higher version of yourself. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with saying I'm a higher version of myself now. I'm a better version of myself than who I was before, but I still love that person I was before. I still honor and respect because I didn't have what I have now. I don't have that. I did not have the knowledge and the experience that I have now. So how could that version of me be who I am now without that? So yes, this is my better version, but that doesn't mean my past version is not good and not great and lovable. She was, and she is, and I am now too. And so are you. So that's my little chat for today. I will definitely work back on getting into more home renovations and getting back into like what to watch for and any kind of tips and tricks that you need. If you have suggestions, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out because that's, I read these messages and reviews, and every time you share and review and share this message, it helps me grow and helps me get in front of other people, and maybe I can help someone else too in a time where they're feeling a little bit alone. So I hope this is valuable for you, and if so, please do share it, please do subscribe, and please leave a review. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for hanging out today. If you liked what you heard, please make sure you hit subscribe, and I hope to see you again next week. Have a good one. Bye-bye.